Bloedel Reserve on Bainbridge Island. Just a ferry ride from Seattle. Beautiful park. This is my first time here. I've heard a lot about it. Just here wandering around. Going to try to find a place I can set up and do an oil painting or two while I'm here today. Beautiful late spring day. It's a Friday, so a weekday, but close to the weekend, so I'm curious how crowded it will be. Masks are still required, although if you're separated, you don't have to have it on at all times. They've got the trails set up for one-way traffic, so it's a little easier to not get congested. Hopefully everyone gets vaccinated and we can get rid of the mask here pretty soon. I got my first shot about a week ago, and it feels like almost a superpower. It feels like I can go into crowds again without worrying about getting infected. Wow, what a gorgeous little pond. There's a little bit of a wide spot here, so this is definitely an option. Could come back and paint maybe just the reflection. That would be fun. Challenging, but fun. Wow. This is beautiful, beautiful view. It's not what I typically paint. It's very manicured, but boy is it gorgeous. This does remind me of a Japanese park, the way this is arranged, the sizing, the placement of the viewpoints. Just gorgeous. Alright, here's the scene I'm going to paint. It was impossible to choose. There's just too many beautiful scenes in this park. I'll definitely be coming back, especially during different seasons. I think if I had come here just a little earlier, maybe mid-April, I would have caught a lot more in bloom. So maybe next spring I'll come back in April. But I like this little blooming tree on the bank of the pond. If you watch my videos, you know I like to paint water. I like all the kind of complicated shapes right there in that little corner, and the way it's backed up by the dark background in the distance. So I think I can use that to pull that little flowering tree forward. And the ducklings, I didn't know they were going to be ducklings. Those are extremely cute. So I'm going to get set up. I'll figure out a little composition, whether I want to go portrait or landscape. Park closes at 4, so I'm going to have to get a move on this. I'll be working on an 11 by 14 inch birch panel I gessoed myself. I'm going with the horizontal orientation so I can get a little more of the pond that way. I'll start out with a quick sketch with a small brush and some burnt umber, and then I'll move from there into a turpentine wash. As I sketch, I try to use straight lines. This helps me simplify the shapes. I find it makes a more interesting graphic, abstract set of shapes as well that I can break down further later. I do the same thing with my pencil drawings and charcoal drawings. I throw in a couple curves or circles to add interest, especially near the center of interest in the painting. Turpentine wash, I'll scrub in some burnt umber in the background and then pick out where some of those big shapes are in the background, and then in the foreground I'll go with some radiant lemon for the grass area and cad yellow and burnt sienna for the main little blooming tree and the pond. With the wash, I'm trying to think ahead to what colors might look interesting if I left them showing under subsequent layers of paint. In landscapes, I find warm, light washes, especially burnt sienna or yellow ochre, play nicely with a variety of greens and blues. Alright, I've got the turpentine wash in and a little bit of a value pattern. Now I'll start to mix up the colors. Lots of greens, so I'm going to be bumping up the reds that I see to kind of counterbalance the greens. And then also some blue. There's some blue in the little pathway behind the tree. There's some blue in the rocks in the pond and the edges of the pond. So I'm going to bump those up and also just bump up the blue in general in the background trees to push the greens and bring the tree, the little main focal tree in bloom, forward. Alright, I've got a few colors mixed up here. I've got some more orange grayed down greens and some more bluish brown grayed down greens. Nothing is very close to the darkest dark or the lightest light that I can achieve. I want to save that for the center of interest. I also have some lavenders for the path going behind the tree and for the edge of the pond. I'll just use those everywhere. I think that'll kind of pop against the yellows and greens in the scene. I switched to Gamsol here. It's getting a little milky because I've been painting with it for a few days now. So now I'll take a relatively big brush and just block in the big shapes in the background. So here, as I'm doing this background, I'm just trying to keep it very abstract, trying to keep the direction of the sun, the shadow, and the highlights in mind, but I'm not trying to paint each branch or each leaf, just blocking in big masses of color and leaving it alone as much as possible. As I'm painting, I'm keeping the direction of the sunlight in mind, and it's really almost directly behind me, so there are not real long shadows. It's a little bit off to the left-hand side, so if there's a bright side, it's on the left. If there's a dark side or a shadow, it's on the right. I want to paint the background with soft edges and little detail. What I'm doing is looking at the focal point, the little blooming tree on the edge of the pool, and then trying to capture what I see of the background, kind of with my peripheral vision. So softening the focus of my eyes toward the edges, looking at the tree and trying to paint what I see in my peripheral vision. Alright, I had to move back in the shade just a little bit. That sun was getting brutal. There are advantages and disadvantages to painting in sun or in shade. Too bright and your pupils shut down, and it becomes harder to judge subtle color. Too much shade and it's hard to judge color on your palette or on the canvas. One thing I'd like to explore is to use a small clip-on light. I have one of those for when I paint indoors, especially to correct light that's too warm. I think it would be useful for deep shade or for painting at night. Another idea is using an umbrella when you're in the sun, especially a white umbrella that diffuses the light. However, windy conditions or places where you can't easily set up an umbrella make it difficult. Often the best I can do is set up in partial shade, and I'm careful to try to get the same amount of light on my panel as on my palette. That increases the chance that I will judge the color and value correctly. I'm starting to paint the water. If I find I paint the darks first and paint those in a vertical motion, and then come back across the top, come back across the darks with lights, that helps with the illusion of the glassy reflective surface of still water. I have a different approach when I'm painting troubled water or rapids. In either situation, I find that the Rosemary Evergreen brush is a great brush for painting water. It's in between soft and stiff. It's a synthetic that can create a nice sharp edge, but it's soft enough that you can get a soft edge as well. Here you can see I'm painting the foreground grass. I'm leaving a lot of the underpainting showing, so the warm yellow ochre is coming through, kind of glowing through the green layer I'm putting on top. I'm trying to paint nice and thin on top, letting that underpainting show. Alright, I've got some colors mixed up here for the center of interest, that main tree. I'm not going to try to paint the trunk in. Not much of it is visible, and it's really almost the same color as that light path I put in. I may go a shade, just a hair brighter, higher value than that when I get it back to the studio, but for now I'm just going to leave that trunk alone and define it better later. So for the foliage of the tree, I've got a group of colors here that are higher chroma and in general higher value than everything I mixed previously, because I want it to come forward, and the way to do that is to give it contrast with the background, contrast in color intensity, the chroma, and the value, light and dark, degree of light and dark. So I'm just going to take a soft, long, flat, it's a Rosemary & Co. Master Series, really nice, kind of loose brush stroke brush, really fun to play with, and just dab in the colors in a random way, just fill in the space that I have there and play as I go. Where I need to create a shadow, a dark, I'm just going to dip straight into pure sap green and just develop it as I go and see how it comes out. I'm not going to do much more with the water, it's just roughed in. I've got the big shapes there. I may drop a little bit of the tree color into the water later to make it read a little bit more like a tree reflection. Alright, the sun keeps chasing me back. It's actually shutting down my camera because it's shining on the camera, and the camera gets too hot and it cuts out without me paying attention. I'm just about done now. I think I've captured all the information, all the color I can. The sun's getting pretty far down behind me and the scene's starting to change just a little bit, so I want to wrap it up. The last thing I want to do here is just mix up a little bit of white and alizarin crimson, maybe a hint of cad red, just for a nice warm, mostly white pink for the blossoms on the tree. I'll just take a palette knife with a sharp tip and drop in a few hints of pure color just to hint at those last few blossoms that are left on the tree. I'll adjust it later when I get in the studio, clean it up a little bit, but I just want to grab that color and drop them in for now. Alright, here's where the painting ended up. It's pretty strong backlighting right now. Not sure how well this is going to come out on the video. Let me see if I can turn it so that it gets a little reflected light. Well, hopefully that's a little bit better. I think I got rid of some of the glare. Anyway, I think it came out pretty well. It reads as a tree. I'm getting a lot of nice comments from people that are walking by. I think the trunk of the tree needs a little bit of help. It's a little confused. I did try to put a branch or two in, and I think those read okay. The reflection in the water is reading pretty well. This rock needs a little more definition, but otherwise, yeah, I think it reads like the scene. What a beautiful place. Beautiful park. I'll definitely be coming back, checking it out during the different seasons. Welcome back to my studio. I've got this plein air oil painting. It's an 11 by 14 inch oil on birch panel. Back in my studio now. I did it about 2 months ago, back in May, mid-May, at Bloedel Reserve near Seattle. Beautiful place. It's a wonderful time to visit. Kind of late spring. There was all kinds of things in bloom. It wasn't too hot yet. Just gorgeous. I especially liked the Japanese garden area. I'll definitely be going back during the different seasons. I went ahead and bought a year-long membership, pretty inexpensive, and feels pretty good to support a beautiful place like that. So I want to now just touch this up a little bit. And as you probably noticed from the video, the light changed quite a bit just in those couple hours while I was there doing the painting. When I first got there, the sun was pretty directly on the scene. It was hitting everything kind of equally. But toward the end of the day, the light actually got a lot prettier. The sun shifted to the left, shifted to the west, and put a lot more of the background in shadow and highlighted just this part of the tree deep into the shadow in the water. It was much more dramatic and I think much more beautiful. So that's what I'm going to go for here. I actually started to go that direction while I was painting there. You can see everything's starting to darken up in the background. So I was responding to the scene in front of me. So I just want to push that a little further. I want to continue to darken up the background, especially the left-hand side, throw it more into shadow, and bring out a little more light on the tree itself. You know, the ducklings also, the ducks and the ducklings there were so cute. I think I actually want to try adding a duck and duckling on this rock. I may make the rock just a little bigger and then put a small duck and duckling there. That'll kind of show the scale of the painting too, I think, and add just a little bit of character. It's very close to the intersection of this 1/3 line. I'm not going to make a big deal out of it. It's not going to be real prominent in the painting. It's just going to be a few little strokes, hopefully, if I do it right. We'll see if it works out. So that's it, really. I think everything else is pretty close. I may clean up the main tree just a little bit, add a little more volume to it by bumping up the sun where the sun is hitting it and deepening the shadow in other areas, and maybe cleaning up the trunk of the tree. It's a little bit messy right now. It's not real clear where the trunk is. I like this grass leading in. I like the reflections in the pool. I like this little grassy bank here and the trail going behind the tree. I think that all works pretty well. So I just need to touch it up a little bit. Oh, and I'll finish this up down here where the crossbar kind of blocked the paint, so there's nothing on the panel there. Alright, I'll get started and I'll show you the end result. Here's the finished painting after a few finishing touches in the studio. I darkened the background quite a bit to push it back and to really spotlight the little tree. I think it's a little apple tree, which is really the lighting I liked best while I was there. When I first started, everything was kind of an even degree of light, of value between the tree and the background. But toward the end of the painting session, this lighting came out and I really liked it. I also added a little duck and a duckling in the water on the rock because they were playing around there the whole time I was painting, so it's kind of a nice memory to try to capture. Let's see, I left this grass alone, left this path alone, retouched that just a little so that it receded back into the shadow area a little more, and then I just added a little bit of highlight here in the water to capture the reflection of the tree. And that's about it. Left the tree pretty much alone, although I lightened this area here and then retouched some of the blossoms. Some of the blossoms were kind of sloppy looking, so I scraped some of that off and retouched it with a little more finesse, with a little more controlled brushwork. But wherever I could, I just left the brushwork alone and tried to build on it. Yeah, beautiful park, beautiful day. Really enjoyed the painting. Thank you so much for joining me. If you like these videos, please like and subscribe. You can jump over to my website and see a better resolution image of this painting. I sell these plein air pieces pretty reasonably, so check that out as well. I'd appreciate that. Sign up for my newsletter while you're there. And I'll see you in the next one.